This is David Klein. I'm the cinematographer on the show Homeland, and you're listening to the Go Creative Show.
Hey everyone, my name is Ben Consoli. I am a director and owner of BC Media Productions, and this is the Go Creative Show, the show dedicated to creative professionals in the video production, filmmaking, television, and music industries. David Klein is the cinematographer of the massive television hits like True Blood and Homeland, and he's also shot many of the classic Kevin Smith movies like Clerks, Mallrats, and Red State, and he's here to talk all about it. The Go Creative Show is supported by our friends at Kessler, making innovative tools for filmmakers. Visit them at KesslerCrane.com. Rule Boston Camera, buy, rent, create at Rule.com. Newshooter.com, essential news for real-world shooters. Shutterstock.com. Hedge for Mac, the fastest way to back up media. And PremiumBeat.com. Premium, royalty-free music and sound. So I've been a big, huge fan of Homeland for years. So David Klein has always been on my radar for to be a Go Creative Show guest. But the more I learned about him, I learned he also shot True Blood on HBO, and he also was a cinematographer for the classic Kevin Smith movies like Clerks, Mallrats, and more recently Red State. So he's such a great interview, and he's got such a love of lighting, and he talks a lot about how he creates his realism in his work, which he's just so expert at. So we talk a lot about naturalistic shooting, handheld shooting in Homeland, shooting around the world for Homeland, and so much more, and that's all coming up in just a couple of minutes. But before we get there, I want to talk about Rule Boston Camera. Rule is the place to go to purchase and rent all of your production equipment. You go to their website, and there's three very simple buttons: buy, rent, and learn. And of course, buy and rent are obvious, but learn is something that I'm really excited to talk to you guys about, because this is what Rule is all about. They have these events called Learning Labs and Pup Nights, and these happen at their facility in Boston. They're free events, and you can get access to people and equipment that you otherwise may not be able to. For instance, Wednesday, November 2nd, is an event called The Latest Cine Lenses from Canon. So for all of you guys that are Canon shooters, or not even Canon shooters, but just love the Canon glass like I do, I put Canon glass on Sonys all the time. This is an event not to miss, and it's from 10 a.m. to 12 noon, and it's at their place in Boston, and it's free. Now, all of their events they post on their Vimeo page, and that's also for free. So if you can't make it to this event because you don't live in Boston or you're just not available that day, don't worry about it, because all you have to do is go to rule.com, RULE.com, and get to their Vimeo page where you can see all of their previous events there for free. Great resource. We love those guys, rule.com. And lastly, Hedge for Mac is the fastest application for importing and backing up media in OS X. It has an extremely simple interface, but it's very powerful. And it's built with video, photo, and audio in mind, because you can import multiple sources and send it to multiple destinations at the same time. It's optimized for files 100 megabytes or larger, and that's really what we're all about here in audio and video. And the best part is it's faster than the Finder. So when you're out shooting, whether you're your own DIT or you're just backing up media at home, this is the tool that you absolutely have to have. Now, here's the deal. You go to hedgeformac.com, and you'll see they have a free version, but I cannot encourage you more. Get the paid version. It's not that expensive, and it's going to save you so much time and give you the reassurance to know that your footage is being backed up correctly. And that peace of mind is worth well more than the software cost, believe me. So for $100, you get the software and the peace of mind and the speed that you're looking for. But if you go to hedgeformac.com/Go Creative Show, you get a 20% off discount. So how about that? So if you're griping about $100, now it's 20% off. How can you resist it now, right? hedgeformac.com/Go Creative Show. You will love this software. I love it. I use it every day. And people have been telling me that they're taking my advice, and so thankful that they did. hedgeformac.com/Go Creative Show. Okay. It's time for our spotlight. David Klein. David Klein's work spans massive television hits and feature films including Homeland, True Blood, and many of the classic Kevin Smith films. His love of realism has defined a generation of filmmaking, and he continues to execute it flawlessly with his work on Homeland. David talks with us about all his gear and lighting choices, shooting handheld effectively, and how the best film education is to simply shoot something. So I'm here with David Klein, cinematographer of so many films and television shows that you know and love. You would be blown away. If you don't already know his work, we're going to talk about it all now, but he's here today kind of promoting the upcoming season of Homeland, which is exciting, but we're going to talk about all sorts of stuff. David, thank you so much for being on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Ben.
So you sort of began your career with an amazing run of films with Kevin Smith. I mean, Clerks, Mallrats, Chasing Amy. When in your career did this start? I mean, I know it was some of your first work, but how early in your career was this?
That was, Clerks was the first thing I ever shot.
Wow.
Yeah, Kevin and I and Scott Mosier, we met in film school. We all went to the Vancouver Film School from, different parts of the world. I had been reading about the Vancouver Film School in American Cinematographer, and I think Kevin had read about it in The Village Voice, We ended up in the same class, which was, really fortunate for me. Right out of school, I was living in Seattle trying to find work as a camera assistant, and Kevin sent me the script for Clerks, his first draft of Clerks, and, a month later, I was on a plane to New Jersey.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Now, where was he in his career at that time? Like, was that one of his first films as well?
Absolutely. He actually dropped out halfway through film school to save the rest of his tuition to put into the budget of Clerks.
Wow.
Yeah.
God, what an experience that must have been. I mean, to be fresh, really, this is your first film that you're working on, and then have such a phenomenon. I mean, like that defined a generation.
It did, and you might call it fresh, Ben. I would say I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. Really had no clue. I'm just very glad that I exposed that negative correctly.
How did that affect you? Like, how did that affect you? I think some people sort of have that confidence from the get-go saying, I can do this even though I haven't. Is that your type of personality, or did it kind of make you nervous?
I was very nervous. Cinematography is something that takes a lot of experience for many reasons, and I had none. So, I shot Kevin's first 3 movies, and then we were actually pushed apart by a studio system that thought he'd be better suited with a more experienced cinematographer.
Really?
So we spent.
What happened there? What happened there?
It's kind of an old school studio thought process where a young up and coming director should have a very experienced cinematographer. And so we got pushed apart for 10 years, man.
Wow.
And then we got back together for Clerks 2. I think once Kevin had the power to say, you know what, I'm going to use Dave again, he did. And so we did, Clerks 2 and Zach and Miri Make a Porno and Cop Out and Red State together.
Yeah. So, I mean, thinking back to that time, do you think that was a good thing for you? Do you think it was a good thing for him to have separated you? Because, your only experience was working with him.
That's right. I'll tell you what, man, at the time, it was the hardest thing I'd ever gone through in my life. And looking back on it now, it's probably the best thing that ever happened to me.
Why do you say that?
Because it forced me to go out and work. It forced me to, I basically figured, for one reason or another, the powers that be don't want me shooting for Kevin right now. So either they're right, basically they're right for one reason or another, and I just had to go out and learn the craft. So I went out and I fucking worked for 10 years.
Yeah.
And it was, I think it was it was just the 10 years of my life where I really learned what it was to be a cinematographer.
Mm. What was going on during that time? What were you working on that kind of gave you that confidence to?
I would say anything and everything. I did a lot of independent films, and I did my first couple of TV shows, and I would work on just about anything and everything. And then, when we finally got back together, Kevin and I, we were still great friends. We had remained friends during this whole time. All of a sudden, we're good friends who suddenly bring 10 years of experience back together again. You know what I mean? 10 years of working with other people, we brought that together, and it was really great getting back together at that time.
Oh, that must have been so much fun.
Yeah.
But I can't even imagine losing that gig. I mean, oh my God, you must have been furious.
Oh,
how did that even go? Did you talk to Kevin, or did you get like a call from your manager, your agent, studio? Like, what happened?
You know what's funny? It was,
I hate to harp on it, but it's it's so amazing to me.
it's so long ago that it's almost comical to me now. But it happened, the first moment was at Sundance, actually. We were at Sundance with Chasing Amy, which Chasing Amy was not in competition. It was just premiering at Sundance. And just before its premiere, Kevin had made a deal with Miramax to do Dogma. And so right before the screening, Scott Mosier, our producer, takes me into a room. And Kevin actually had to take his girlfriend at the time, Joey Adams, and had the same conversation. Because Miramax had basically said that, we're gonna make Dogma with you, but we're gonna give you a cinematographer, and we don't necessarily want Joey as the lead actress in the movie.
Oof.
So Kevin had to have that conversation with his girlfriend at the time, and Scott Mosier had to have the same conversation with me. And so, I walk into that screening of Chasing Amy at Sundance, and everybody loved it, and I'm just thinking, I don't get to do the next movie, is all I could think.
Why did they do that right before the screening? Can't they just give you, that's the worst timing.
Yeah, but, I think it's better than right after.
True.
Afterwards, you would have been on cloud nine, and then, hey, let me knock you down.
Oh, man. I guess it's just difficult to have that conversation at any time.
It's you might as well, let's just get it over with. You just got to get it over with.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when you unfortunately have to fire somebody. It's just, you know what? Let's just get it over with.
Rip the bandage off. Just do it. Well, I want to talk about film education because,
I had none, Ben.
I'm sorry?
I had none.
Well, I want to know from your perspective, like, what do you think the value of it is for young filmmakers now that are just coming up that, may either not have the means to have a proper film education or maybe aren't appreciating it the way that they should for those that have? I mean, what are your thoughts on it?
My thought is that having a well-rounded education is very important, but do you get that at film school? I don't know. The film school I went to was more of a trade program. You know what I mean? It was all hands-on for the most part. And I came out of it with enough knowledge to be, an entry-level camera assistant, basically, and I knew exactly what every department did, and I knew how to do certain things, but I did not come out of film school with the ability to shoot a movie. I happened to do so, but and it's a miracle that I exposed that negative correctly even, but I've learned so much more on every set I've ever been on than I could have in 10 years of film school. So, people ask me how to gain knowledge and experience, to do this job, to be a cinematographer. And I just say, you got to be on set. You have to be on set, be on as many sets as you can, no matter what your position is, just to learn, because everybody on that set knows something that you don't. So you got to take that with you.
I read an article of yours. You had done an article for Creative Cow, I think, and you had made a comment about not being afraid to ask questions, something like that, or not pretending that you know everything, something to that effect that I thought was great, because that does happen with young filmmakers. They almost feel like they feel like in order to be credible, they have to know everything. But how could they know everything because they're so young? It seems kind of like this strange cycle, and to break it is really the only way to learn anything. Do you want to elaborate on that thought at all?
I'm trying to remember exactly how I put it, but I think I may have said something along the lines of, don't be afraid of telling people what you don't know.
Yes, that was it.
Because I started so young, and I think probably one of the smartest things I've ever done is just to surround myself with people who not only have more experience and are smarter than I am, but that aren't afraid of the fact that I told them how green I was. You know what I mean? I remember hiring people on Mallrats and telling them, "Hey, I'm going to lean on you because I'm green." And one of my good friends, Andy Graham, I hired him as a focus puller on that movie, and he told me later on, he was like, "When you told me that, I was all in. I was behind this guy because I was upfront about it. I was upfront about the fact that I didn't know what I was doing, so it helped me out." And since then, we talked about that 10 years that Kevin and I spent apart. Since then, I think that I've got a sophomoric grasp of cinematography. And it's taken a long time, and I still have so much to learn.
Where do you learn from? I mean, obviously the people that you hire on set, but where are you getting your inspiration from?
Life, I have to keep my eyes open, and you have to just pay attention to light. Like right now, Ben, I'm talking to you, and I'm looking at. I'm in Brooklyn, and the sun is bouncing off a window. It's reflecting off a window a block away and shooting through this window and hitting the wall in a way that I could never recreate if I tried for a year. You know what I mean? It's just incredible. But I see that and I'm like, oh, that's something I've never seen before. The way that light's hitting that wall, the way that sunlight is doing that. So, and I take that with me. So it's paying attention to light in every environment, and filing that thing away, filing that little piece of sunlight away in your brain, because somewhere, sometime it's going to help you tell a story.
Let's talk about.
Did that make any sense at all?
It did. It did.
Right. If it doesn't, you can start me over, and I'll.
No, I think it makes a lot of sense. It was actually kind of reminding me of. I don't know where I had done an interview with. Actually, it was just released today with Niels Alpert, who shot the Jim Gaffigan show.
Yeah,
and he had employed this lighting system called, I think it's called CRLS lighting system, that's based on one light source in all reflectors. So you sort of have like that one ridiculously hot source and within and that'll come through a window or something. And then you just use reflectors to guide it where you want to. And it looked so complicated, but, he did it for the challenge. And I guess a few movies have been done that way as well. Have you heard of that system at all? Because just the mention of having it come in and reflect off the window sounded like something that he would have mentioned.
I haven't, but, it's interesting, and it seems very natural, and it's something that I do all day, every day, is try and create that one source, or the feel of that one source, even though we may be using many sources. But part of my job is to go into an environment and make it look real, light it so that it tells the story. It serves the purpose of telling the story, but it also feels very real, and hey, if I can light a scene with one source, I'm very happy, because I'm looking at this room that I'm in, and it's lit by one source. It's lit by the sun, but the sun is bouncing off the building across the street. It's reflecting off the window on that building. So all of a sudden, that's two sources from one source. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a double shadow behind me. And people say, double shadows aren't real because it means two sources. Well, the sun is creating two sources right now out that window. And if it's real, it's real. So I've not heard of that type of lighting, but I could imagine getting behind it.
Let's talk about Homeland.
Yeah.
You had come in at season 3, am I right?
You are.
Right after Nelson Cragg, he did the first 2 seasons. So it had already had an established look. I want to get your story about kind of how you came onto the show and how you transitioned from the existing 2 seasons to sort of your look and feel.
Chris Manley actually shot the pilot, and then Nelson Cragg, I believe, came over at episode 2 of the first season, and yeah, he shot the first 2 seasons, and I came in to take over season 3. I think Nelson and I have a very different approach to lighting, but at the same time, we're telling a similar story. And so I looked at everything he did, and it had a very realistic and gritty look to it. And so I wanted to continue that. I think I have a different style of lighting and of accomplishing that goal, but at the same time, we're telling the same story. So I wanted to just be gritty and real, but I'll light the hell out of it to do that. If the scene needs it, I will go very big lighting wise and to tell the story. But if I walk into a location and it looks appropriate for the scene as is without any additional lighting, I'll shoot it that way too. The scene is going to require a little bit of work or a lot of work, and that's what we're there to do, is tell that story. So I'm good either way. But to answer your question, I don't know exactly what Nelson's approach was to lighting, but I think we were going after the same thing. We were going after this real, kind of, getting this camera under the skin of these actors and getting right up in Carrie Matheson's face, right up in Claire's face with these wide lenses and telling her story. And the lighting, just needed to be very natural and real. And I like to think it's got some grit to it,
Were you given a lot of freedom?
I would say total freedom. Yeah. My first meeting was Leslie Glatter brought me into Homeland. She's the producing director, has been since season 3. And my first meeting was with Leslie and Alex Ganza and Michael Click. And, they really didn't give me any direction to the lighting. They made it very clear that they didn't really want it to feel like a different show. But at the same time, they're saying, we hired you for a reason. We brought you in for a reason. So do that, be that reason. And I think I am.
For season 3, were you in, I can't remember exactly. Was that all sort of Washington, United States based, or was that one of the ones that went international?
We went internationally. We shot Charlotte for DC, and we shot Puerto Rico for Caracas for Venezuela, and then we shot in Morocco for Iran.
Okay. So, and was that the first time the show kind of went for large chunks internationally? Because that may have been just a really good transition point to bring a new person in to make the look and feel a little different.
Yes and no. I mean, we didn't go for large chunks. We shot in Puerto Rico for a couple of weeks, and we shot in Morocco for about, I think, 3.5 to 4 weeks. But the show had gone to Israel a couple of times before. Mm-hmm. They had been to, with Nelson, they'd been to Tel Aviv, and I think on the pilot even they were in Tel Aviv. So they'd done it before. But, you're not wrong. You're not wrong that you have these different countries you're going into. So a new cinematographer isn't the wrong way to go. That wasn't a very good answer, but
you had mentioned realism quite a bit, and Homeland certainly is that. What is your strategy for shooting and lighting to make that show so real?
I think that is a scene by scene, day by day, case scenario that changes all the time. One thing I have noticed, we were in the States mostly for season 3, and then in season 4 we went to Cape Town, South Africa, which was standing in for Pakistan and Afghanistan. And one thing I noticed, I don't know if this is going to answer your question, but one thing I noticed is that the light in South Africa, the sunlight it's brutal, man. It's harsh, and it's from the northern sky, which took me a little while to wrap my head around. And I let that kind of become a character, the character of what was Pakistan. And we used a lot of smoke and a lot of dust, and which when backlit by the sun, just became even more harsh and real. And it became kind of its own character. So, I kind of pay attention to where we are, and I let the light from a specific place, and what John Kretschmer, the production designer, does with the sets, and this all kind of becomes a personality. And I just I try and sit back and be a student of, the look of where we are. And I just try and pay attention to what is real, what's happening with the light. And I try and augment that or recreate it or, create it in such a way that helps to tell the story.
I know that it's a scene by scene basis, obviously, because you're going to approach it differently. But was there kind of a lighting package that you always had with you that a strategy that maybe you employed all the time, at least as your baseline? Was there anything like that from the lighting standpoint?
There always is. I always have my go-tos. I always have the lights that I want to have, on the truck or on the stage. And it changes every year. It's constantly changing, especially with how sensitive these cameras are these days. We're using smaller lights and LED technology is just exploding right now.
Yeah.
And I think it was, LED technology was terrible for a couple of years and now it's getting really good. So my lighting package changes. There are certain things that I always want to have. I always want to have those two Mole Richardson 24K HMIs on the truck for location work. It's the most beautiful Fresnel you can imagine. And it's the only HMI that has actually tricked me into thinking it was sunlight. It's just got this clean, beautiful light coming out of it. Those are standbys. And stage work is I'm a huge fan of tungsten. There's something about tungsten light. It's one of the only true incandescent sources that we use. And so there's something so real about it because it doesn't have a wavelength. It doesn't have a refresh rate. You know what I mean? It's just pure light. So
yeah,
tungsten I will always rely on a stage. And, and so based on those kind of principles, I add to these packages now with a lot of LED tubes. Quasar Sciences has these amazing LED tubes that you mix them with the little tungsten and they're just beautiful. And they have good color temperature these days. Where a few years back they you had to match the color. We were putting magenta or green or whatever the fuck we were putting on there. But now these LEDs are pretty amazing. And again, going back to how sensitive these cameras are, I've started bouncing off of gray. We bounce off of gray Muzz instead of white beadboard these days because everything's so sensitive, and you just have to knock everything down. I asked Larry Parker at Mole Richardson. I asked him to start making triples for all his lights. So because we end up with putting so much wire in these lights that it just doesn't fit. You can't put 4 doubles in a light. So, but these cameras are so sensitive that sometimes you have to.
What are you guys shooting on?
We shoot Alexa mostly. Alexa, but I've mixed everything for one reason or another on Homeland. We, when I took over season 3, we had 2, legacy Alexas, and I kept a red dragon on the truck for its size. Sorry, at the time it was an Epic. It wasn't yet a Dragon. But anytime we would get inside a car and do driving work, we'd get the Epic and just break it down to its smallest configuration, and so we started mixing the Dragon and the Alexa footage, and I've found that all of these digital cameras have their own set of rules. And as long as you follow those rules, you can really push them around later in post. So if you want to mix the footage from an Alexa and the footage from a Dragon, or now, or at the time an Epic, you just have to follow that camera's rules, in terms of exposure and dynamic range. If you I was basically keeping everything safe for the Alexa, keeping everything safe for the Dragon, and keeping the exposure and range, and then they would match all day long. I could mix and match those cameras in any scene. So Homeland season 3 was probably 20% Epic, 80% Alexa. With some 5Ds, and I have a Canon 1DC that we would use for some shots here and there. And then season for, I would say Homeland was probably 30% or 35%. Then it was a Dragon. So, and then last year in Berlin, the Dragon was our D camera, so I'd say even more than 35%, probably 40% of last season was Dragon, and the rest Alexa.
Do you think you may completely transition into a Red workflow entirely for the show?
No, I think we've actually, no, because we have minis now. The main reason I had the Dragon always was because of its size, and we're not a 4K show, we're a 2K show. Mm-hmm. So I don't need the capabilities that camera has. And now that we have minis, I think we're going to be almost an entirely mini show, an Alexa mini show.
Yeah, those are fantastic cameras. I'm excited because I'm going to be doing a commercial with one in the fall, and I'm like, it's my first project with an Alexa Mini. I've worked on Arri Alexas before, but the Mini, it's so cute and small. You just want to use it.
It is cute and small, and when they first came out, I said, well, what can't you do with this thing that we're doing with the regular Alexas? And the answer is nothing. It basically does everything that, it gets a little funky to balance handheld, but when you consider the weight savings, it's you can't argue with it. Without a doubt, it's the one of the lightest handheld cameras I've had, and not that that's everything. When you have a show like ours that's 90 to 95% handheld, you can't argue with a lighter camera, because day in, day out, I've got these 2 operators, sometimes 3 operators, who are wearing this camera all day long.
What are they mounting them on? Because you do a lot of handheld. So
what are they mounting them on?
Yeah,
they're spines.
So they're not. Are you using easy rigs or anything like that, or are they truly holding it by hand?
It's I would say it's almost always just right on the shoulder.
Wow.
To get in there, to get into your characters' faces, to go through doorways, the easiest, most effective thing to do is put that camera on your shoulder. The easy rig is great if you have to boom up and down, but it's also got a pendulum effect which swings, so there's nothing as real or as good as putting an operator's spine underneath the camera. So that's how we do almost everything on Homeland. We do a lot of tricks. I like to sit an operator on a dolly, that's on track. So we have a nice handheld move, but it takes the footsteps out of it. So we do that a lot. We do a lot of rickshaw stuff. So we do a lot of semi-stabilized handheld work.
That's interesting. Yeah. That's pretty cool. So you're throwing them on a dolly, kind of pushing them through the scene, but they're giving it that handheld feel.
Correct, because it actually is on their shoulder, and they're just sitting on the dolly. I've been doing that for a lot of years. I think Red State, where I was the cinematographer and the operator, was where I really started doing a lot of handheld dolly work, and it just worked out really well. Yeah.
You are listening to the PremiumBeat.com Song of the Week. It's called Warm Thoughts by Chill Study. PremiumBeat.com is where to go for all of your royalty-free music and sound effects. They have a great website where you can access thousands of royalty-free tracks for as low as $49 each. And it's not just the single version of the track. They offer you a variety of cut downs, 15-second, 10-second, 30-second. They also offer loop packages so you can create your own track and modify it as you need to within your NLE. I love it, absolutely love PremiumBeat.com and go there for every one of my projects, and I strongly encourage you to do the same. PremiumBeat.com. All right, let's take a minute and talk about Kessler. The Kessler Shutter Dolly is the latest innovation in camera dollies and finally provides filmmakers with the performance and versatility dollies in its class have always lacked until now. The Shutter Dolly utilizes standard speed rails and can be operated manually or in conjunction with Kessler's motion control solutions, CineDrive, and Second Shooter Plus. For more information, visit KesslerCrane.com. And lastly, Shutterstock. Shutterstock has nearly 3 million royalty-free video clips, but it's not about quantity, it's about quality, and that's why I love Shutterstock. You go there, you type in something in the search box, and you are given a great selection of quality footage. Now, the most important thing is that you work so hard to make sure that your footage looks amazing. And when you need to use stock footage, you want that to be as good or better than the footage that you have already shot. And that's what you're going to find at Shutterstock, especially if you use their Director's Choice collections, which I love. These are really well curated collections of footage, of clips for all different categories. And it's a great place to start when you're going to Shutterstock.com. Their pricing is great, and you can have a significant savings if you buy the packs of footage. So you can buy 25 HD pack and you end up saving $250 versus buying 25 individual HD clips. So it's saving, it's selection, and it's really well curated collections of footage. How can you go wrong? And it's not just HD either. They've got tons and tons of 4K footage. So you need to check it out. Shutterstock.com. Head over there and go buy some clips, will ya? Shutterstock.com. All right, we continue on with the rest of our interview with the great cinematographer, David Klein. I want to talk about Carrie's character. Her bipolar disorders, it's a major storyline in Homeland. It really does, it is the foundation for the show. But she goes through periods of the show where she's doing well and then periods when she's really manic. And I wanted to see if you are sort of taking a different approach with her and with the scene when she is in those manic states.
That's always, I always take that into consideration. And again, that goes back to what we were talking about, the scene by scene basis of how to light a scene and tell a story. And with her in that manic state, it's almost more about where you put the camera at that point, and how you also serve the story by lighting. But
how do you mean where you put the camera?
I look at a scene, and a lot of times I have to kind of, just sit back and sit on an apple box and watch the rehearsal and think about the point of view of the storyline and the point of view of that senior. Whose point of view do we need to be in? And sometimes you'll hang back and you leave Carrie Matheson, tiny in this big, in Potsdamer Platz in Berlin, so she's just this tiny figure at the end of the scene, and Saul walks away from her and she's alone in the world, and sometimes you don't want to hang back and you want to have a wide lens right up in her face so you can really feel what she's going through. And, it's, how do you know when to do what? I couldn't tell you. It's a gut instinct a lot of times.
Mm. Are you lighting her any differently when she's manic? I mean, I know a lot of her character's kind of in her eyes. Do you treat her differently when she's in that state, lighting wise?
I usually don't light for her manic state. We did some tricks in season 4 when she went off her meds. Mm-hmm. She was kind of sabotaged and she didn't have her meds. And so she was getting really manic. And so we did some not lighting tricks, but we did some work with the camera. We did something that I learned from Jeff Cronenweth about shaking the camera. There's a shot in Fight Club where I think it's a push in on Brad Pitt and the camera, the image starts to shake, but Brad Pitt kind of stays in the center of the frame, and it shakes so much that you actually see the sprockets of the film on either side of the image. It's shaking that much. And I asked Jeff one time how they did that, because I was doing something similar at True Blood, and then we ended up doing it in Cape Town with Claire. And I said, Jeff, how did you get that that image to do that? And he goes, really? You want to know what he did? He goes, we shook the hell out of the camera.
Really?
I said, what? He goes, yeah, we shook the hell out of the camera, and then Fincher in post did a multi-point track on Brad Pitt's face and stabilized it. So you have this warping that happens because your camera is shaking on more than one plane. And so when you stabilize the face, everything around it's going to go crazy. Everything's going to get warped and moved so that the software basically that's stabilizing the face is just doing what it can. In doing so, it just creates this warping effect everywhere except in the face. And it's really cool. So I actually used it on True Blood a couple of times. And we used it when Carrie was getting manic off her drugs in season 4.
Let's talk about True Blood just for a few minutes. Another fantastic show. The look is completely different. You can't be more different than Homeland. What was the inspiration for True Blood, and kind of how did you approach that differently?
True Blood was another show that I came late to. I came in season 4 to True Blood and was taking over for Matt Jensen, who was leaving on his own accord. And I used Matt Jensen's episodes as my Bible. I figured I was taking over for this cinematographer, and everybody seemed to be very happy with his work. So I used all of his episodes as my Bible. And it was I have to say that I approached True Blood like a graphic novel. I had a meeting very early on with Alan Ball and Greg Feinberg where they said, look, this is how we think True Blood looks, but at the same time, we hired you for a reason, so do your thing, but this is also what we like. And so I just kind of followed, again, a gut instinct and using Matt Jensen's episodes as a guide. That's the direction I took it.
Did you enjoy that process?
Yeah. It's a lot of cinematographers, a lot of people would think that, I don't want to do what somebody else has done. But if it's something you've never done before, it's actually rather rewarding because I hadn't lit like that before. And so it was new to me and it was a challenge. And when I was doing it, it was a lot of fun.
Are there any differences between shooting a show like True Blood and shooting a show like Homeland? Not the look of it, but just the logistics of it. Like, does one maybe have more budget, more time? Is one a little bit more rushed? Do either of them feel like a feature film, or they're very much television? What are some of the differences?
True Blood was a behemoth. The show was enormous.
Yeah.
We would have anywhere from 14 to 20 days for an episode. It was really big. And we had so much night exterior that it just, night exterior takes time because it's not like we were shooting, downtown LA where you have this ambience already, you have a base exposure. We didn't have that. We were shooting, out in Malibu mostly for our night work, where you're creating every bit of light for night exterior, and True Blood just took time. Vampires come out at night, man.
Yeah.
So you got to shoot it at night.
Yeah, exactly.
And it takes time. And then, on Homeland, we have 9 or 10 days an episode. So you have to move a lot faster. But we're also shooting in urban environments.
Yep.
Almost always urban environments. So you go out at night, we were downtown Charlotte, we were downtown San Juan, Cape Town, Berlin, whatever. There's that base ambient light that I was talking about. You have a base already when you go outside. So, you're adding highlights and you're sculpting the light, you're turning certain street lights off if you can and that sort of thing. But you already have something built in that you work with. So it makes you, I think, a little bit faster on your night work.
Do you enjoy kind of that? I mean, I guess I'll call it stress, but I guess that pressure to make your days and do it quickly. And I mean, do you kind of like that pace?
I came from independent features to TV, and so the schedules are actually very similar. I've done some big movies where you have a little more time. But I mainly started out in indie features where you have no time. You're shooting a movie in 25, 26 days. And so that kind of schedule feels very, very similar to big budget TV today. So I was kind of used to it. But people ask me what the difference is between, say, a big budget feature and a TV show like Homeland and lighting wise. And my answer is usually that in TV like this, your first idea better be the right one, lighting wise, because you don't have the opportunity to change it. It is kind of this machine that just keeps moving every day, keeps going, and you can't slow it down. You have to roll with it. So when you get into a location, when you get onto a set, the first idea you have to light that scene better be correct, because you don't get to change it.
What is next for you? What are you going on to right now?
Starting Homeland in New York City. Currently, we have stages in Brooklyn, we have offices in Brooklyn, and I think we're going to shoot a lot in Brooklyn. Story-wise, I couldn't tell you, but because I'd get fired. But
we don't want to get you fired.
But it's the next story, the next chapter in Carrie Matheson's life.
Anything that we should be on the lookout for this upcoming season of Homeland? Any particular shots that were challenging, or anything you're particularly proud of, so people can kind of pay attention when it premieres later? When is that coming out? Late summer, early fall?
It's not till next year. Ben, we started late this year because, everybody wanted to have more scripts when we started. So I think we're actually going to have about 6 scripts when we start. I haven't even started prepping yet. I start prepping on Monday. And so I really couldn't tell you anything. I've read the first 2 scripts, but other than that, I don't have any information.
I'm talking about the season that's coming out this year. Season 6, I believe.
So am I. We haven't started.
Oh.
Yeah.
No way.
We haven't started, Ben. It comes out in January. Usually we start shooting at the end of May, early June. This year we haven't started yet.
Oh, so, I thought you were prepping for season 7.
No. I'm prepping season 6.
No way. Okay, so there's a little bit of a wait for people.
That's right. All right. I think the air date was normally in September.
Yeah. Now
it's going to be January.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. So yes, that is very much hush hush. I understand now. Exactly. Well, lastly, before we let you go, do you have any places online where people could find you if they want to communicate with you? Twitter, Facebook, where are you?
I'm like everybody else these days. I have an Instagram feed that goes to every other social media outlet that I'm on. So you can find me there. I'm also taking over I like to say taking over. I'm taking over the ASC Instagram feed for a couple of months to chronicle, the prep and the first couple of episodes of Homeland season 6.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much, David, for being on the show. I really appreciate it, and good luck with the new season.
Thanks, man, and thanks for having me. I hope it wasn't too nonsensical.
It was perfect. Thanks so much. Thank you so much, David Klein, for coming on the show. Really fun to talk to you, and I am so looking forward to the next season of Homeland. Of course, I want to also thank Matt Russell for mixing, mastering, and making the show sound so good. Matt Russell over there at gainstructure.com and on Twitter at gainstructure. And while you're on Twitter, tweet us at Go Creative Show, at Go Creative Show. All the things we talked about today are available at gocreativeshow.com, as well as our great discount for Hedge for Mac and links to the Song of the Week and all previous episodes. It's all there, gocreativeshow.com. And I want to thank our sponsors, Hedge for Mac, Rule Boston Camera, Kessler Crane, NewsShooter.com, Shutterstock.com, and PremiumBeat.com. Without these people, the show wouldn't exist, and that would be sad. So go and support those guys. Support those that support us, and we'll continue cranking out these shows week after week for your enjoyment and ours. See you guys next time.